What is good, ladies and gentlemen? This is Robert Jackson, and thank you for tuning in to our audio only interview on today. And yeah, it's gonna be one of those chill and we're just gonna be vibing. This is pretty much what this is. We're just vibing and in the in the groove. So today we have a guest who has been heard on so many videos from Gabaleth and so many different Zelda projects, Mario, and she's been around the block for quite some time. So, ladies and gentlemen, I like to introduce Haley Hylia. Thank you so much for joining me on
Hooray!
today's episode. Yay.
Yeah, yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Oh yeah, of course, of course. I guess for those that are, I mean, I've already just gave your introduction, so I guess to start this off, like, because I know it's been a really crazy, productive time for you, so just share a little bit
Mm.
about yourself and yeah, what have you been dabbling into as of late?
Yeah, well, I'm Haley Hylia, obviously, as you just said, and I'm actually an American voice actor who is in New Zealand. And I'm not Kiwi, which is what a lot of people seem to think when they find out that I'm in New Zealand. I just happened to move here. So yeah, I've been doing voice acting kind of on the more professional level since 2015. It was only in 2019, I think, that I actually got signed to an agency here in New Zealand. So I've been really doing professional work on a national scale since then. But I really enjoy doing the contract work with content creators online, like Gabaleth, who you mentioned. It was actually PopTunes TV on YouTube. Check them out, who was the ones that kind of really gave me my break. And I still record for them. And yeah, I'm doing all sorts of things. I was recently very busy with a job that I've just finished. Woo! But now I'm actually working on a novel, which is awesome, and kind of trying to refocus and do some more creative things that I had had to put aside from my regular job. And that feels really great.
Yeah, this sounds like you've been really hustling. That's pretty much all I
Yeah, yeah.
can. Yeah. So congrats on that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I know it's been a lot of hard work, but you know what? The perseverance is what I keep telling everybody. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, no question. Anybody who's starting out, we all start out with a really crappy microphone. Maybe you have a pop filter because you've done a little bit of research, but you probably don't have a very good space to record and you don't get anywhere for a long time, but it's totally worth sticking it out.
Yep, of course, of course. So
Mm.
I guess with all of that said, we might as well just jump right into the nitty-gritty here. So you said that you got your start. Well, at least you've started doing it professionally since 2015, but
Yeah, yeah.
where tell us your little origin story of how these creative, you know,
Stuff.
mishmash of stuff
Yeah, I
that you've
know.
been up to. Yeah, tell us where it all
Yeah,
began.
I've always been a really creative person, and I have always wanted to be a voice actor, which a lot of people find quite surprising because actually I've run into so many people that don't even think that voice acting is a specific profession. I don't know where they think voices come from, but I was really inspired by Robin Williams in Mrs. Doubtfire as a kid. It was one of my absolute favorite films, and in the film, he is a professional voice actor. The film very famously begins with him in a recording session for a cartoon. And it was then when I was a kid that I was like, oh my gosh, he's doing voices as a job. I want to do that. So I've always had this dream that I wanted to do voices professionally. And as a kid, I wasn't really a performer. I was very shy. And it was only as I sort of grew up and came out of my shell, and when I moved away from the US in particular, which was over 10 years ago, I really blossomed and I totally got over my stage shyness. I started doing theater productions. And that really pushed me to, hey, I should give voice acting a try. And so it's only been really since I came to New Zealand that that's really begun. And in just a few short years, I got signed to a major agency, and they also offered me voice representation as well, which was fantastic. And yeah, it's really helped to catapult that confidence and being super invested in it, when for quite a long time I thought, oh, this is just a bit of a hobby, it's not really going to go anywhere. But it has, and I'm really fortunate for that. But in terms of the other creative stuff, my main thing is actually being a professional artist. I have an Etsy shop, I sell prints, and I go to all the media conventions here in New Zealand. selling my wares, which they're all mostly about video games, including Zelda, which is cool. Yeah, I'm just a super creative person, and my husband is also incredibly creative. So it's just this big kind of creative goo that we've got going on. There's so much art and imaginative thought going on just in my household, my in-laws, that it just fosters it to keep going.
Yeah, I'm just like, what is something to even add to that? I mean, a lot of the stories that you're telling is just so cool.
You don't meet a lot of Kiwi voice actors, that's for sure.
True, and I haven't
No,
really had a lot on because when I do the show, I usually have people who are like, "Oh, they're in LA or Texas or New
no,
York," but
no.
I haven't really had a lot of, well, New Zealand.
Yeah, I know.
Act
And that was, it's funny that you say that because originally that was exactly what put me off being a voice actor because I had done research and they all said, look, you've got to be in LA, you've got to be in New York, maybe in, there was quite a lot of voice acting stuff going on in Houston. You had to be in a major city. And at the time, I was still living in the US, I was in Arizona, which there's like no entertainment, anything in Arizona. And I was like, oh, am I going to have to move to California? How can I do this? But because of the internet, because of amazing technology and equipment that has become actually quite affordable, people can really do fantastic audio remotely. And of course, with social media, things like YouTube, there are really quite professional creators on there who make fantastic stuff and they get really talented people to collaborate with them. And that's become really accessible to so many people, regardless of where you are. And that is so awesome. And I'm really only able to be doing any of this because of that stuff.
And how was the experience like when you first actually got your start of voice acting online and just getting your name out there?
I was really lucky. I did something that I think a lot of people now, you hear all of these kind of horror stories. Oh, make sure you never do anything without pay. Don't do something if it's, they just promise you exposure. And while that is a lot of the time probably accurate and good advice, when I was first starting out, I didn't have a single credit to my name. So I had no clout, I had no reputation, I had nothing to show for myself. I just had my demo reels. I went online and I saw it was Pop Tunes TV, who I mentioned earlier. They were holding an audition for a video and it was not paid, but it did have the guaranteed exposure of millions and millions of views on YouTube because that was what they were getting. And they said, look, if this goes well, we can get you back for paid work. And I ended up being cast. It was for a really sort of somewhat cringe video where I was voicing Selena Gomez. And that video, upon release, I think instantly shot up to 10 million views. And I think it's currently sitting around 30 million. That was back in 2015. And yeah, they totally made good on their promise. They got me back for more work and it was very well paid. And that ended up getting me heaps of other paid work just because it had such an incredible exposure. I mean, yeah, millions and millions. I look at the numbers still, and it's one of the top videos. It is my top viewed voice acting project that I've ever done. And yeah, that was really what kicked it off. So I was getting lots of inquiries from other people. Oh, hey, I saw you in this video. And that's continued with things like Gabaleth. So that was really how I got my start. But I did also solicit, and that was how I got in touch with Gabaleth to begin with many years ago when he was still kind of up and coming. I just reached out to him because I loved his videos, and I said, "Hey, I'm a voice actor. Here's my demo. If ever you want to collab and you want to cast me in something, I'm down." And he was like, "Cool, that would be great." And so now I record for him all the time, and that really worked out. So I would say to people, don't be too shy and don't just wait for opportunities to come up. If there's somebody that you really like, content creators on YouTube, whatever, throw your name out there. Just say, hey, you've got nothing to lose. Even if they're like, oh no, I don't have anything right now. You never know. They might contact you a year in the future, and all of a sudden you're part of one of the things that they're going to do. And that's always really worthwhile.
Yeah, I definitely can agree to that because there's a lot of, well, I mean, you kind of hear some misconceptions of like, oh, um, don't undercut yourself, or oh, don't do this because it's not gonna be looking good on your resume. But honestly, like anything that you do, like there's a lot of I'm not saying names or anything, but
Yeah,
there's voice
yeah.
actors that I've realized that I recognize that you see on anime or a lot of TV shows that are out right now. Like they got their start doing a lot of fan projects, and now look at where it's gotten them. So you never know.
Yes. Yeah, totally. I don't think that there's any harm in doing things just for exposure. I mean, you got to be smart with it and don't do it every single time, obviously, if it's getting in the way of you doing other professional work, anything like that. But I think it's just using your best judgment, um, because that can really work out for people, especially when you're new. You really need to start out with getting some experience and just getting yourself out there. It's not just going to be instant up to the top and getting professional gigs. So it's worth just having fun. And that's really also why I did, and I still do, heaps of free work because I just enjoy it. And I love seeing the end product. I don't really necessarily care about the paid aspect. I just really enjoy voice acting. So yeah, it's totally worth just doing whatever it is that you think is going to be fun.
And over time, you get to grow a lot as an actor and as a person, and you just kind of grow, period.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can look back at some of my older stuff and I'm like, oh, wow, that's not as good as I thought I was at the time. It's like, oh, I could have done that so much better. And especially when you learn about the technology, which I think is a big obstacle for newbies in particular. Yeah, everybody has to grow, and also working with different directors, different content creators, whatever it is. Everything is an excellent experience on also the whole professional side, talking to people about, hey, is this paid? Having that conversation about money, the quicker that you get used to doing it, that is a huge lifelong skill in any area. So it's really important.
What's something that you wish you learned in the beginning that, you're still applying to this very day? But what is something that you kind of sort of wish of like, oh yeah, 2015 Haley, like, I wish I knew this a lot sooner. You know what I'm saying?
Uh, so I was actually going to do a YouTube video about this because I think it's really important for all newbie voice actors to think about. I was using Audacity, which granted is a perfectly usable program, but I wish that I had sort of looked around at different programs because the Audacity style didn't actually fit my needs. There were a lot of things that I was looking for that I didn't realize I could have gotten in other programs. But the biggest thing actually is EQ, doing a little bit of EQ and post processing on your voice. And what that actually is incredibly important. And it can be a huge difference in your overall audio quality. You might obsess about, oh my God, my room sounds terrible. Now, granted, if that's the case, no, there's no amount of EQ that's going to save you. But just that little bit of extra attention in the post processing makes all the difference. And I didn't even know what that was to begin with. And I could have been doing it the whole time. And I really wish that other people would just take the chance to learn a little bit about EQ and the basics of audio engineering, because it's not super hard. You can do it really easily in most recording programs, and it is really the difference between sounding a little bit too amateur and sounding more professional.
Absolutely. So you did some musical theater, you did some theater work and stuff like that. What was something that you really took that was like kind of like the standout moment that, that still sticks with you to this very day?
Oh, wow. I would say, yeah, I've done quite a lot of theater. I've done dramatic theater, which is scripted, as well as improv comedy. And I've done a lot of improv. And my husband and I actually have our own improv comedic production group where I live. But I think the standout for me is actually I did a theater production of The Diary of Anne Frank. And I played Mrs. Van Dan, who was the mother of the other kid who was living in the annex with the Frank family. And I was really lucky that the director of that happened to be a very well established New Zealand director and actor. And he was so impressed with my performance and the whole thing. He was so good. It was such a standout. And even to this day, I run into people who saw it and they say, that was the best local theater production that has ever been put on. It was such a standout. We had thousands of people come to see it over the run. Absolutely wild. And that was what ended up getting me agency representation, was that one local theater production that happened to be done by a very well-known New Zealand director actor. And I think about it, at the time, it was a full-time rehearsal. So not only was I working, but I was doing full-time hours, practically living at the theater. I actually spent more time at the theater than I did at work or at home during that time. And I was also injured at the time. So I had to do the entire thing in a sling, the entire rehearsal period, and do everything with my left hand, and then take off my sling for the actual production. So it was quite an intense commitment from my side at a very difficult time, but it was so worthwhile. And it's something that I look back on and I say, wow, I'm really proud of how I persevered and the tenacity that I had during that time. Also, incredibly emotional production. I would say that's a huge standout in recent memory. That was back in 2018, I think.
So you've carried all of these skills into VO. Did it take
Mm.
you quite a bit for, I guess, with the experience that you had on stage, did it take you quite a bit to really start adapting to, oh, so this is what I have to do behind a microphone? Or is it kind of like something that just kind of came, naturally? Or it was just, I don't want to say seamless, but more like a
Yeah,
natural transition
I would
of some
say
sort?
if, yeah, I think if you have experience on stage, you're probably going to have an easier time transitioning into voice acting with nobody watching you, because it is still very much reading the emotion in a line. And, even though I had a director there, he was very much, you know, we had to channel the emotion of our characters. He wasn't just going to tell us how to do our jobs, you know. So if you're at all used to doing live performance, I think it's a huge help to get into voice acting. I think I was already adept at the voice side anyway, but yeah, I didn't really struggle at all. I thought it was it. I mean, as you said, you didn't want to say the word seamless, but I did personally find that it was seamless. But that is possibly just because I had a lot of experience performing before.
Yeah, I can definitely see why a lot of actors they say, "Oh, improv stage is very much mandatory if you definitely want to pursue VO because you get to learn a lot about on stage that you can apply.
Mm.
Like there's the breath technique control and the technicality stuff that I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure that a lot of us are kind of certainly familiar with by now. But
Mm.
yeah, for anybody out there, I encourage improv and definitely look into your local theater productions if you can.
Mm. Yeah, it's totally worth getting some stage time. I think improv in particular is, as scary as a lot of people seem to think that it is such an incredible learning opportunity, and it will teach you so much about yourself. I would highly recommend anybody. It doesn't even have to be comedy. It can be improv of any sort. I do a lot of musical improv. That has been so much fun. But it can be dramatic. We've done full, hour-long, totally improvised dramatic plays. Amazing experience. Amazing experience. Not only do you get to discover stuff about how you perform and how you would phrase things, but you also get to do that with other people. So, especially if you're going to have a joint recording session with people, whoa, you really need to practice that ping pong, that back and forth with your fellow performer. And improv is such an amazing way to get that experience.
Yeah, Ben, how do you balance all of these, I guess, jobs that you have with voice acting and also you everything? Yeah.
Poorly. Honestly, it's really just a, oh, what am I most passionate about at any given time? I tend to really focus and throw myself into one thing at a time. I mean, voice acting, it's always sort of there. And especially, I do quite a lot of regular voice acting for Gabaleth in particular. But, I just kind of flow in between things and just sort of make it work. It's probably not the most organized method. Um, Deadlines are helpful. Also, having a typical job outside of the house, because all these sorts of things are mostly work from home for me. Having a normal job where you can actually just escape, and during those work hours at your workplace, that's all you have. It actually really helps you to prioritize what you want to do on your days off. If you're working 3 days a week, all of a sudden on your other four, you say, oh, I really want to make sure that I do this, I do that. And it helps to organize you. And I think having a lot of spare time, it can be really difficult to get stuff done because you're like, oh my gosh, how do I organize this? Or I can just do it later if you're a procrastinator. I'm the opposite. I'm somebody who wants to do things instantly. And I think that in a work context, that may be a bit helpful. But yeah, I think it's just at the moment, I'm just kind of going wherever I'm most passionate. And something like writing a novel is a huge passion for me. And I have the time now that I've finished my other job that I can really focus on it. But yeah, it's a flowing sort of whatever is going to happen whenever I feel super passionate about getting something done. That's when I do it.
As a professional voiceover talent, what have been some of your, because already looking at your website, yeah, there's a lot of material that your resume really does speak for itself. So what have
Oh,
been
wow,
some of
thank
your
you.
most, yeah, totally. So what have been some of your most, I guess, proud? Yeah, I know when I ask, like, what are some of your favorite roles? But it's like, you just can't really answer that because all of these are so good. But
Oh,
yeah,
thank you.
what have been some of your proudest ones that, because you've done Taylor Swift, Princess Peach, and so on and so
Yes.
forth. So what would you say were the ones that really skyrocketed, I guess, your
Mm.
career per se, that
So
you're the most proud of?
yeah, that's an interesting question. I
Yeah,
mean, I
that you
think,
cherish fondly to this day. Yeah.
yeah, I definitely have a sweet spot for Breath of the Wild Zelda because she has actually become my most in demand voice. It just started as an impersonation that I was doing of Patricia Somerset. And once I started doing that for Gabaleth, I got so many people who were like, "Oh my gosh, you sound just like her. Can you please do this for my project?" And it was just massive. The response to that was huge, and it meant so much to me. I actually have a fan art piece that I sell of Princess Zelda, and Patricia Somerset came to Auckland for a convention that I was selling at, and somebody bought my fan art piece and took it to Patricia to sign and autograph, and then she brought it to me, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. That was a really cool moment. But I think the other piece that unfortunately isn't on my website yet because it hasn't been released, I was really proud. My last national commercial that I did here in New Zealand, no less. I never get hired for my Native American accent. I always get hired professionally to do other accents, which is quite funny. I got cast in a telecom commercial, and the whole script was improvised. So there was only very basic things that we had to keep in mind, but it was this hilarious group recording session with other very, very well established actors, one of whom was one of the original actors in What We Do in the Shadows, the original New Zealand film by Taika Waititi. He was there, and I was like, oh my God, I couldn't believe it. I didn't actually even recognize him until he left. And then I had a bit of a starstruck meltdown. But we had this hilarious medieval painting that we had to look at and pick out a character and just voice them and say really ridiculous things. And it was totally up in the air. And it was this group recording. So I had all these people listening to me, giving me feedback. And it was so great. And the first thing out of my mouth was it was this woman with this giant tub of water. And so it was supposed to be like a big sales market where they're selling really bizarre things. And so I just shouted out, King's bath water, only a little bit of wee. And they just lost it. I didn't realize that the entire recording team was laughing because they'd muted themselves. And it was only when they turned everything back on that I saw the lead guy crying. And I was like, what happened? I didn't understand. but he thought that that was so funny that it actually became the hero introduction line to the commercial, which I didn't expect by any means. So I felt pretty chuffed about that.
I'm just laughing. I literally had to mute myself.
Yeah, it was. I don't know where it came from.
Oh.
It just, you know,
It's just one of those, hey, just say whatever
just say
random
something.
nonsense that comes out of your mouth, and then boom,
Oh,
it's up on
yeah,
up on
and
the air
honestly,
forever.
again, improv. The entire thing was improv comedy, and I was like,
See
oh
how
my gosh,
improv, see how we're bringing that back? Everything just
yep,
kind of all circles ties in together. Yep.
it's
Continue.
really a worthwhile thing.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just wanted
No,
to
no,
bring up. Yeah. Dang, I didn't want to. Were you finished?
yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah.
I think everybody needs to go and experience improv. Even if you just do a really basic beginner course, it makes your brain think in different ways. You don't have to continue with it. You don't have to, actually perform on stage to get the benefit of doing an improv experience.
True. And being an artist and a blogger, those are also what you kind of consider to be like, something I'm really passionate about at the moment. So how are both of these going for you? Being because I know you also cosplay too, so that also kind of ties into like, I'm a creator who's passionate about a lot of stuff,
Mm.
and you know what? I'm just gonna see where this goes, see where that leads me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think
Especially
that's
with social
actually,
media, man.
yeah. I think that what you just said is something to really keep in mind. See where it goes, and that's even something that, even after all this experience that I've had, it is a doubt that comes up to me is, oh, what's the point? You know, oh, this might not go anywhere. It's going to take a lot of time and effort. And even after that, nothing might come out of it. But my advice to everybody is to just exactly what you said, see how it goes. You don't know unless you try. And how many people who are successful, they tried and they may have had lots of doubts to begin with, but you just have to do a bit of follow through. Be willing to give yourself and whatever it is that you're passionate about the time. And it might lead you to something. Either that thing itself might become successful, or it will introduce you to something else that can become successful. And that is basically the story of my life.
Yeah. Is there anybody or just anything in particular that you kind of consider to be like an influence or an inspiration in your personal life and for your career?
Oh, wow. There's a lot of people. I think, like I said earlier, Robin Williams was one of my absolute favorite performers, not just because of how talented he was, but because of his struggles. And it's something that I've come to experience a lot, particularly with comedians. There are a lot of people who have turned to comedy as a therapy, really, as a coping mechanism that helps to get them through difficult times. And I am no stranger to that. I have found performing just in general to be an amazing coping mechanism, and I think that's a huge thing for me. Is my creativity is the way that I really feel fulfilled and the way that I thrive. And so people like Robin Williams, but also some of the other comedians that I've met here in New Zealand who have been very open about really serious depression, really serious anxiety, and how performance has gotten them through. They are always huge inspirations and people that I look up to, because I think about what they're going through and what they've been through in the past, and how it's, yeah, that perseverance, which is something that we keep bringing up because it is so important, is really what inspires me to keep going with pretty much anything. And I think they're the people that always come to mind when, I'm feeling, oh, should I really be putting effort and time into this? But just right now, my novel, I've been trying to write the same book for quite literally 5 years. I have written over 1 million words that have ended up in the trash because I'm like, oh, this is bad. I've changed it, but I'm still going because there are so many people who, that's the thing. You can't give up. You have to persevere. And any of those people, really, whether it's Robin Williams or some of the other people that I've met here in New Zealand, they're definitely my biggest idols.
Yeah, I still think about Robin all the time, man. I
Mm,
remember watching Mrs. Doubtfire, like you mentioned earlier, and
yeah.
Aladdin, and God, so many other ones. Just recently watched this great movie, Hook, that he was in, and
Oh,
fun fact, that was also where I discovered freaking Zuko himself, Dante Bosco.
oh,
Yeah,
wow.
I did not know years later that he was even in the movie until,
Mm,
Wikipedia, man, and IMDb
yeah,
and
yeah,
interviews that he would give out. But yeah, like Robin, man, still
yeah.
one of my all-time favorite,
Oh,
just
I think he
inspiration.
he
Yeah.
he will be an icon
He'll
forever,
always
you
be an
know.
icon. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But I guess that kind of transitions into like, and funny how we were talking about Robin because I guess he can sort of segue into my next segment here because he was very much a huge Zelda fan and he was
Yes.
really passionate about video games and anime and so much television, which kind of brings into media for just a little bit. But yeah, I just kind of find it really funny how Robin was kind of like my perfect segue into my next question. So when it comes to media in general, God, man. Now I'm now I'm still thinking about him right now.
Yeah.
Wow, that boy. Yeah, I could just geek out about all of his movies and,
Oh, yeah, me
stuff that he
too.
done, stand up and just dude. Yeah, God, if I had the time, man. But yeah,
Yeah, there's a
even
lot
night
of
at the
love.
museum. Yeah, so much love. But moving towards, media, video games and all that good stuff, because I know from you, actually, that's kind of. You know what? I'll ask that in a little bit. But for media in general, like some of your biggest ones, because I know you mentioned people, but what are some of the, I guess, the shows or games or movie, just anything that
Oh God.
you've, yeah, just lay them here.
Oh gosh. Well,
Let's
obviously
gush
Legend
about 'em.
yeah, yeah. Legend of Zelda has been a huge one for me. I am a veteran gamer. One of my first games, it was not my first game, it was my second game, was A Link to the Past in 1992 on the Super NES. Earthbound as well on the Super NES. All those old 8-bit games, man. Oh, such nostalgia. So I love video games. Just like it is my greatest passion in life. It truly is. And I'm actually working on a video game concept right now. Just to add one more thing to all the other things that I'm doing. I had originally wanted to do game design in uni and I got talked out of it because everyone was like, "Oh, it's really hard and, you're really bad at math and so you shouldn't do it." So I listened to them and I regret that ever since. But oh my gosh, I love sci-fi, Star Trek, Star Wars, Dune, Frank Herbert is God. Oh my gosh, Horizon. Just gonna let you in on something that they're making a Horizon Zero Dawn television show here in New Zealand. Super excited, very much hoping that I can end up on that project somehow because I would like die fangirl dreams. I watch a lot of K dramas. Oh my god, like there's so many things. Ghost of Tsushima, PS5, man. Whoa. So glad that I got one. Skyrim, I'm still playing Skyrim. I'm trying to do the entire game with a single character. I'm getting pretty far. Man, The Sims has been like one of my greatest loves. Stardew Valley, obviously, amazing game. Just recently went to the Stardew Valley in concert orchestra. Whoa, super cool. Oh my gosh. There's way too many fandoms. Lord of the Rings, obviously, and I live in Middle Earth and have met many people who worked on Lord of the Rings. I'll say to you, one of my greatest moments was interacting with Craig Parker, who was Haldir in Lord of the Rings. We had a couple of Facebook comments back and forth, and I was like, oh my God, I've made it. I just spoke to a celebrity. I'm so amazing. um, wow, I'm like overwhelmed by how much fandom is in my head. Final Fantasy, obviously. I'm mostly known with my art pieces for Final Fantasy works, but I also love The Witcher. Uh, oh my gosh, just video games in general. They're such an incredible art form that I could just go on and on and on just about those, really.
And I take it your name comes from Zelda, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know why I zoned in on that so much. I think it was supposed to be it's a subtle Zelda. reference. It's not like I was calling myself the Legend of Haley, which would have been incredibly egotistical and stupid. But it's also only one letter away from my name. So it just kind of suited it. And it's funny how many people don't realize who Hylia is because she's not actually mentioned in every single game consistently. So the people who knew were like, oh, I see what you did there. But yeah, it is really, The Legend of Zelda was like my biggest obsession for so long. And it is still one of my favorite, if not my favorite game franchise of all time. So it just felt a little bit fitting that I'm so interested in video games, and that's what's inspired my art. That's what's inspired me to do voice acting, that I would pay, tribute to this franchise in a more subtle way.
Well, since we're here, share all your love with Zelda and just give a full, I guess, a deep not backstory, but like,
Oh,
just
wow.
share with us why The Legend of Zelda personally means so much to Haley Hylia.
Yeah. Well, I think, especially as a kid and having Link be a young person, which is exactly why they did that, it was really relatable. He was a young person who he was lazy. He wanted to sleep, he wanted to stay in bed, and he kind of just got thrust into these situations. So I really enjoyed Link as a character, even though, you think about it, he doesn't have a voice, he doesn't speak. You know, you are meant to put your own personality onto him, and that's exactly what I did. And I just really enjoyed the music in particular. It just really tickled every fancy that I had, even as a small child. The art, the graphics, you look back at the 8-bit design and they still hold up. They're amazing. I was just looking at some of the pixel art the other day, and you're like, wait a minute, this is the early 90s, and this stuff is so great that people are still enjoying these games now, all this time later. That's pretty amazing. But the whole evolution of the series has been pretty amazing. Things have grown. We got into 3D. I remember when Ocarina of Time came out. Whoa, absolutely mind blowing. Had things like Majora's Mask. My personal favorite, though, is always going to be Twilight Princess. Controversial choice, I know. A lot of people are like, ew, no, I hate that game. But to me, that was the peak because it was serious, it was dark, it was very long. I loved it. It was perfect. I can't say that I'm like a massive fan of the direction they've gone with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. I can see why people enjoy them, but I think I'm definitely more of a classic Zelda fan. And I'm still interested in seeing where they're going to go with it, because it's just Hyrule itself, the world that they've created, all the entities, the deities, and the lore is really interesting to me. I don't know why I think it's because I was so young. I was only, 4 or 5 years old when I started playing video games. And that really makes a huge impact on you. I only really had Donkey Kong Country and A Link to the Past were the two games that I had for quite a while, and that was it. And I just loved it. That was my introduction to video games entirely. So I think it's just that it's been a part of my life for so long, and I can't fathom it not being there. So yeah, it's perfect.
It's so wild that I can literally hear Breath of the Wild Zelda just with the way that you're speaking. Like, and I really do mean that as a compliment.
Oh, wow.
Like, it's just, dude,
Well, I can't get rid of it entirely. It is my voice.
yeah, Zelda, but we'll talk more about it in part two. So if y'all are enjoying this so far, be sure to stick around and yeah, we'll be able to pump out and just chat and chill and just gush more about video games for however much longer. So take care and I'll see y'all in the next part coming shortly. Bye for now. Welcome back, everybody. So last time we were just now discussing Zelda and pretty much your love about all things Zelda related. So, since you've explained why Zelda means so much to you, talk about your favorite things about
About The Legend of Zelda specifically.
Yeah, just favorite things about Zelda or why video games also mean a lot to you and your favorite things about
Mm.
playing, video games in general.
Yeah, I think
And
that
by
my favorite
extension.
things, yeah, I think the favorite things that I have about Zelda extend to all video games. And I love stories. I love the whimsical nature of it all, but even just as a performer, I think, and also just a storyteller, I love consuming stories. And even though the earlier Zelda games weren't, like we see these first person narrative driven things like Ghost of Tsushima, Horizon, where you're embodying a specific character, they still had these amazing stories with them. You know, traditional good versus evil, kind of saving the world situations, but there was so much more than that. And I think Nintendo did a fantastic job at setting up the world, which I mentioned earlier, to be something that it really came across and you really felt familiar with the world that they built, even when it was these more simplistic 8-bit games on the Super NES and the Game Boy. Because obviously, look at the massive Zelda fan base and how huge it's been, including someone like we were saying, Robin Williams, who I never knew that as a kid that he was really into it. And I found that so appropriate and just like destiny that he was such a huge idol for me when he also loved The Legend of Zelda. So that was such a cool thing to find out when I got a bit older. But I think with video games, yeah, it's just the ability to go to different worlds and experience different people and experience totally different scenarios that you would never have the opportunity to do. I love farm sim games like Harvest Moon, Stardew Valley, which is hilarious because I actually live on a farm and I would never do any of those things that you do in a farming sim. I hate, I don't want to be outside in the garden necessarily. Like I can pot a few plants and then I'm done. We do have lots of chickens and stuff, but I don't really want to be dealing with it. Like, and yet here I am playing, I don't even know how many hundreds of hours I've racked up in Stardew Valley, pretending to be a farmer when I literally live on a farm. But, other games that, especially if they have a historical context, Ghost of Tsushima it is easily one of my favorite video games just of all time because of how well done it was. Being able to go back into a really specific time period in history, a huge history buff. I studied anthropology in college. It's just such an amazing opportunity, kind of like historical films, which are very much one of my favorite genres. Getting to be transported somewhere like that, that's really what video games are about for me, is just that other world. And also I think that comes through for me as a creator, as a writer, making these different worlds and transporting other people with my words to somewhere else. It's all sort of a similar medium, and being able to be interacting with it and controlling a character as you go through those worlds is so amazing. Um, yeah, I think that's really why I'm super into video games. Also, the music. Whoa, amazing soundtracks have come out of video games. Whoa, absolutely amazing. And as a musician, as a singer, yeah, it's been a huge inspiration for me. And there are video game soundtracks that I still listen to quite frequently because they're so awesome. So there's just so much to love about video games, really. And I don't think that they're a waste of time. There's a lot of people that say, oh, you shouldn't give your kids video games. They should get outside. And like, fair enough. Yeah, we're all addicted to our phones, everything in moderation. But I don't think it's fair to say that video games are just some blanket waste of time, because how many amazing artists and creatives and musicians have been inspired as a kid, and video game creators, very high skill, from playing these games that we did. And I would say that I am absolute proof of that. I wouldn't be doing any of this stuff. You look at my art, it's all because I love video games. And people are like, whoa, you're so incredibly talented. And I'm like, yeah, because I love video games so much that it pushed me to do this, so I disagree with the idea that video games are a waste of time. Hail video games. Yeah.
Yep, I'm pretty much in the same boat. Yep, that goes for me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would also get into like the favorite Zelda games or characters, settings, or just pretty much a lot of the technical stuff. Like, but there's just so much that we could discuss about Zelda that
Oh my
honestly,
gosh.
I think a whole separate episode in
I
and
was
of
just going to say
itself.
that. You just need an entire episode just dedicated to Zelda. I could talk about that for ages because I got some opinions. Yep.
Oh, hot takes are controversial.
Yeah, probably a bit controversial. I'm a bit of an old school Legend of Zelda fan, so I probably have things that the newbies might not like to hear.
Well, I mean, we can talk about it now or just save it for
Oh
it.
God. Yeah, I mean, I just like look, I'm just gonna say it. Tears of the Kingdom was not good. Um, uh, it just was not good, you know. I was bored. It was just a copy of Breath of the Wild, and it totally retconned Breath of the Wild. Everything that we did in Breath of the Wild was just gone. Yeah, really disappointing, especially coming from a time, growing up, Nintendo didn't release Zelda games very often. And it was a huge endeavor, but they were always really different. And we were always blown away when something new came out. And yeah, I think I was quite disappointed when they even just announced that they were going to do Breath of the Wild 2 before they had a name. Because, yeah, Breath of the Wild was not. I'm definitely in the camp of it didn't really feel like a Zelda game. There was a lot of different stuff that I found to be way too easy and not super engaging, and some of those core features were gone. So I was really hoping that they would do something a bit different. So when they announced that they were just going to do another Breath of the Wild, which they just ended up reusing all their assets, I think it was probably more of a financial decision for Nintendo than anything. Yeah, I can't say that I was super enthused. I really hated the fusion mechanic. I can't even really remember what it was called. It just didn't appeal to me at all, and it really got in the way of the story, of which there was very little. So yeah, I flew through Tears of the Kingdom and was like, okay, yeah, whatever, played that. Next, please. And basically just went straight back to something like Skyrim, which is like over a decade old, but is still incredibly entertaining. So yeah, no, it was not my fave. But there are aspects of the Breath of the Wild-esque era that I really enjoyed. I really loved the character development that we got to see of the champions. I loved those cutscenes, and it's funny because it's actually Hyrule Warriors, Age of Calamity, that I actually thought was even better in terms of showing us the personalities of the champions. It was basically all cutscenes, was that game. I really liked that. And it was playing that after Breath of the Wild that made me enjoy the Breath of the Wild storyline much more. I thought Breath of the Wild was a little bit sparse on the actual character development, and that's where Hyrule Warriors made up for it. But yeah, Tears of the Kingdom, I was just disappointed that Nintendo didn't do something a little bit different, using the exact same map and getting rid of everything that we'd experienced in Breath of the Wild. What happened to all the Sheikah stuff? Like, what happened to the Divine Beasts? Everything's gone, and it did sort of just feel like not to get even more controversial with these people, the Star Wars sequels. It was like, wait, what happened to all the good stuff that we did before? Why has everything just suddenly fallen apart? Oh, I guess that was for nothing. But yeah, it's all right. Everybody has their own preference. That's just me.
And you know what? Totally valid. Like, I haven't even played Tears of the Kingdom. I don't know, it
Ah,
just didn't really appeal to me. So,
see, there you go.
yeah. Because we've already got a Breath of the Wild. Why would we need another one? Yeah,
That's
I'm just
kind of,
saying.
yeah, that was kind of exactly it. And I didn't feel like I got a new experience. I just felt like I had to do everything all over again, which you quite literally did. You know, you have to find all 900 Korok seeds. Who's actually going to do that a second time? Like, what a thing to include in your game. You've got to find all your exact same gear that you had in Breath of the Wild, with no explanation as to why you lost it. Like, I loved, starting Horizon Forbidden West. it is a similar circumstance where you've got to get all of your same equipment back, but at least they gave a single throwaway line to explain it. Aloy says, "Oh, something happened along the way and I lost my gear." Like, as pathetic of an excuse as that is, at least they addressed it. Whereas in Tears of the Kingdom, there's no explanation why you don't have any of your amazing equipment that you already found in the other game. It doesn't make any sense. So yeah, I was pretty disappointed. And I was really glad that I waited until after the hype to play the game, because when it first came out, saw all these, 10 out of 10, the best video game of all time. Oh my gosh, just the amount of hype that was going on. But I played it really probably about 6 months after it came out. So the hype was completely gone because everybody had gone on to Baldur's Gate 3. They're still going on about Baldur's Gate 3. It really seems like Tears of the Kingdom has just kind of fallen by the wayside. And you can kind of see why, because it, like you said, it was just Breath of the Wild all over again. And we all already did that. I don't know how many hundreds of hours people put in. I think I was close to 200 hours at Breath of the Wild. Why would I want to put that in for the same game to do all the same things? But, it happens, man. It happens.
Have you played Baldur's Gate 3?
I haven't, because I feel like if I get into it, I'm going to want to do nothing else. And so I should probably avoid it until I have accomplished a few other things, like, this video game that I'm working on, my book that I'm working on, my voice acting projects, all those other things. I think I'll save it for another time.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's so many games that I would want to play, but then at the same time, I just didn't. That's the thing with me, because if I get too into a game, I'm just gonna be
Mm.
like, oh, okay, I'll just play for a couple of hours, a whole day goes by, and I'm like,
Oh, totally.
frick, I forgot to do that thing I was supposed to do this
Yeah.
morning.
Oh, I should have gone to the
No.
grocery store. I don't
Exactly.
have any food.
Exactly. Yeah. 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 You get me. You know my
Oh,
pain.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. But no, I totally respect, the look. This is just one podcast. Feel free to disagree with with us if you like. But yeah, we're just stating that, like, okay, just because a game doesn't really float your boat doesn't mean, if it's if somebody else loves it, then
Oh,
it's totally
totally.
great, totally fine. Like we're not totally shaming anybody who likes a
No,
game
no
because
way.
not because somebody didn't like it. Like we shouldn't really do that, and especially don't go at each other's throats. Like my
Oh, yeah,
God.
totally. Everybody has things that they prefer. And like, I can totally understand there are some people who they just love the simplistic style of something like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. And that resonates with them. It's just their aesthetic. Or, the whole sandbox nature of Tears of the Kingdom. Some people loved it. It was such an amazing feature. And it just totally wasn't mine. Probably because I grew up in the early 90s when, our controllers had very little functionality, and so did the games. You could basically just walk around you couldn't even go on a diagonal. You just had to go up, down, left, right. That's kind of where I'm coming from. So I am probably a bit conditioned to think in really traditional game mechanics. But that's just me. I stick with it, but I can totally see how Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, and a lot of other similar games or newer games like Genshin Impact really hit it for some people. And that is totally cool. And I just love that we can all love video games. That's what it's about.
Yeah. So I guess with everything that you've discussed about, BOTW or Tears of the Kingdom, would you say that those kind of represent your least favorite aspects in a Zelda game, or is there more to it about your
No,
least favorite
yeah, I
areas?
think that's it. I like I said, Twilight Princess was actually my favorite. And I think for anybody who's played that game, they're like, oh, you're one of those people.
Oh God.
Like, I love dramatics. I love serious, dark, depressing stuff. Like, that's just me. I love really serious drama. I love performing really serious drama. So for me, Twilight Princess was the most adult Zelda game. And when it came out, I was like, oh my God, yes, this is what I have been wanting, because Link was actually on the older side. He was I think he was supposed to be 17. So yeah, wow, he's so old. But he wasn't a little kid. And a lot of what's happening is quite dark. Um, Breath of the Wild is the complete opposite of that. Even the plot is supposed to be, oh, Calamity Ganon and whatever, but it didn't feel to me as dramatic and dark as Twilight Princess. I thought that it was way too easy. Because as we all probably realize, Nintendo's main demographic is younger people. They can't compete with Sony and Xbox, so they have to go where they actually have a footing, which is with younger people. And especially with the Switch, they're in the mobile game market as well. And that's a lot of little kids. So I can see why they made Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom on the easier side. And I'm somebody who likes to be challenged in games. Um, you know, I would have preferred if they had a difficulty mode, and there wasn't. I guess you could say there was master mode, but I didn't really find that to be difficult at all. And if anything, it made it easier. So I was quite, yeah, it just wasn't, nothing was really what I wanted. But there's still hope. Surely they're not going to do a Breath of the Wild 3. They're going to have to come up with something else, especially if they actually end up announcing a new successor to the Switch, which they're supposed to be doing in the next financial quarter. Um, Very interested to see where they go. I'm sure there are amazing aspects of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom that they could carry forward. Like, I really liked the recipes and being able to cook your own food, and the different outfits and equipment. But I think they just need to build on those and possibly take a bit of inspiration from some other games, just to kind of bring themselves up to snuff. I think it was a bit outdated. It felt like they were trying to introduce features that other video games had already well done. And it was like, oh, you guys are a little bit behind, you know. But I guess we'll see. There's still hope. I think that they could still make something really good, even if it is, kind of in the same vein of these newer Zelda games. I still have faith that they're going to make something cool.
Yeah. And moving over to content creators, because there's a
Mm.
lot of playthroughs, there's fan related content, fan fictions, and, video games, and so much that has been coming out of Zelda over the past, what, 30 plus years that we've been graciously offered this angelic franchise. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm just like, there's so much content that is out there too. So, and I know that you've also voice acted in a lot of, fan related comics and video
Mm.
games and projects and so much and so forth. Um, but yeah, at one point, did you ever think, like, oh man, there's so much content out there, but there's just so much to catch up on, and I just don't really have so much time to really indulge in everything that a lot of the, when it comes to indie related stuff, like there's just so much that is out there. There's just not enough time to really um check it out or indulge in,
Mm.
a lot
Oh,
of
yeah.
this stuff that is out there right now. Video game official fan, just so much Zelda. You obviously just can't get enough of it, it seems.
Yeah, and I mean, that's
Darn
kind of
you,
the problem of being an
Nintendo.
adult, is like you end up with all these other things that you kind of have to do. So yeah, I would love to be able to spend more time, consuming all of the amazing stuff. And I'm really lucky working with Gabaleth because I keep on top of a lot of the new comics that come out from amazing fan artists and cartoonists out there. So I'm really fortunate that, he sends these to me and I get to read them. And some of them are hilarious, and there are so many outrageously talented people out there, the writers, the artists. Some of them are really fantastic. And it's great that at least I have that connection, that I can get this kind of steady flow of Zelda in particular content. But yeah, I wish that I could just, sit around and browse, Tumblr and all these different places, YouTube, and try to catch up, because there's so much stuff, like you said, and not even just for Zelda, but for all of the different things that I love, particularly art. Whoa, especially with something like Dune, which is a bit of an older fan base, and Frank Herbert. There are, like, professional artists who have done pieces, and I'm like, oh my God, I could just stare at things forever. But oh, I have a job. I have things that I have to do in my house, you know. Um, but I feel like a lot of us struggle with that, don't we?
Buddy, you're preaching to the choir. Yeah, yeah, man, yeah. By the way, just a quick little side note. Have you watched the I know there's apparently supposed to be a movie coming out, which I wonder how
Mm.
that's gonna go. Um, yeah, we'll just see what happens with that
Yeah,
one.
I'm a bit scared, especially because they said that it's supposed to be live action, and to me, live action usually means lots of CGI. And I think we've all seen in recent times that CGI can be pretty iffy. And I don't know, I think Nintendo has a bit of an old school view on things. They do things in a very specific way. And I don't know how that's going to translate into a live action film. I think that Legend of Zelda would make a really great anime. I think it would make a really great animated film. But yeah, I'm definitely concerned by the live action standpoint, especially when they only have Super Mario the movie as the one thing that they've done. It's a huge leap to then go into live action. So yeah, I'm definitely a bit scared. But after Rings of Power, I have just had to accept that companies are going to take your favorite IP and they're just going to throw it in the toilet sometimes. So I'm sort of prepared because nothing can be worse than Rings of Power, just saying, which is hilarious because two members in my family worked on the show. Um, and Amazon basically financed my entire home renovation. So sorry, but not sorry. It just wasn't a very good show. So yeah, I feel like I'm prepared for worst case scenarios. And if they do a good job, which, oh my gosh, that would be amazing, I will be so happy. But, you know, it might not. And I'm sure that it won't please everyone anyway. But they can always reboot it, which they probably will do anyway. So.
Yeah. Yeah, everything you said. Yep,
Yeah.
100% agree. Yeah. But yeah, like I said, there's books, manga, the video games, you got the
Mm,
TV show. There's so much Zelda content out there,
mm.
which also I gotta ask, have you seen the cartoons or like any of the animated stuff? Like
The old stuff.
yeah, the old, but I think there's
Oh
been
yeah.
some new stuff that has been coming out. I don't know so much about anime or animation stuff like that, but we did get a lot of manga, which is, you know,
Yes.
it's pretty interesting too. So,
Mm.
yeah, there's just so much, way too much content out there. But the cartoons, I got a funny story about that. So, I discovered the cartoon. I didn't even know, like, I mean, to be fair, anything that's a video game is going to be adapted into live action or animation somehow.
Of
But
course.
I found out about the Zelda cartoon because it was through Nostalgia Critic's old review of the Super Mario Brothers show that came out in the 80s.
Oh,
Yeah, that's how I found out about it. And that's how I knew about the "Excuse me,
oh, that's
princess."
classic though.
Yeah. And then we got the times where Ganon was, in his pig form and
Oh,
Zelda and
yes.
all these. I even remember they did a crossover with Captain N, which was
Oh,
another
wow.
show that. Yeah, yeah, we're going way back,
We're going
bro.
way
Yeah,
back, man.
yeah. The Game Boy sounded like Slimer from Ghostbusters for some reason, and also fun. Okay, we were talking about theater. Oh my gosh, who is the actor? Levi Stubbs. I think he was the plant from Little Shop of Horrors. Voices Mother Brain in that show, which, oh my
Oh,
god. Yeah, yeah. It took me years to find out that, you know what? Why does that sound familiar? It's the plant from Little Shop of Horrors.
oh
Like,
my
it
gosh,
literally
that's
just is the
hilarious.
connection. Yeah, it is hilarious. So, next time you watch it, just
I
always think
will.
about, yeah, just think about that, the song, that the plant sings every time you
Oh,
listen to it, you just think about Levi Stubbs and the plant.
oh, wow.
Yeah.
No, I did not know that.
Feed me. Feed me, feed me, feed me. That's all I
Oh
think about Mother
God.
Brain now. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, and also tying back to Robin Williams. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just thinking about a lot of the 80s stuff, and now I'm just over here thinking about Levy and just that freaking
Oh, we've
catchphrase,
come a
man.
long way since the 80s,
Yeah.
that's for sure.
Oh, yeah. But what are your 2 cents on the cartoon?
On the original Zelda cartoon.
or
I
just
mean,
the animated shows in general, you know?
yeah, I mean, I think it's cool to see things get adapted, and sometimes they're a hit and sometimes they're a huge miss. I think that they were very of the time, because if you watch other stuff from the era, it's actually not too dissimilar, and that's kind of mind-blowing. But, yeah, I think that if they were gonna do something nowadays, it would be so wildly different. They would be not even recognizable as almost Zelda material. It would be so different. I think those original ones, they didn't actually stick to the lore very much. It was more about a, "How can we make a cartoon, and what do kids like right now, regardless of what the actual IP is that we're doing?" Um, I think they would do a better job now. At least I would certainly hope so.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and since you voiced a, Princess Peach or sometimes Daisy or just a lot of the princesses in the Mario related videos,
Mm.
I take it that you're also a Mario fan by any chance?
Yeah, I have played Mario games. Oh my gosh. I think the first, I don't actually remember the first one. Look, I go back a long way. I've been playing video games for more than 30 years. So, I've played a lot of Super Mario stuff. Yeah, I've always really enjoyed it. I can't say that I'm super into the newer games. I thought Super Mario Odyssey was quite fun. I had a good time looking for all the stars or the moons, whatever they were. But I played the new what's the new Super Mario game that came out? Mario Bros. Wonder. It was
Yeah,
a little
Wonder.
bit disappointing, yeah, because it was just really easy, and I think again it was targeted at younger kids. So when you're a very very experienced gamer, who's used to really incredibly difficult combat games, and then you go to something like that, you're kind of dumbfounded and like, what am I doing, but I think overall the franchise is pretty classic and it is enjoyable. They seem to always churn out something with a different mechanic or a different angle that people really enjoy. So yeah, I would say I'm a Mario fan. Mario Kart, man, Mario Kart was the thing and still is. It's such a fun game. I love battle mode in particular. And even the newest game, Mario Kart 8, that's on the Switch, I love the battle mode. They have this thing where you're popping everybody else's balloons. Oh my god, I could do that literally for hours. It is so much fun.
Okay, there we go. So yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of Mario related stuff that we could
Mm.
discuss about, but that could also be for another podcast.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Could
because there's
literally
just
go
way
through
more there.
each game.
Yeah, each game indeed. And
Mm.
also, side note about Wonder, it's gonna be so weird hearing Mario. And no shade towards the new actors or actresses, but it's gonna be really weird not hearing Charles Martinet
I
voice
know.
Mario
Yeah.
anymore. Yeah, fortunately.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I wish him all the best of luck, you know? And congrats to the actors, though. The
Mm.
new guy, Kevin, I think. Yeah, congrats, bro. Like, way to go, man.
Yeah, you
um,
gotta throw in the towel at some point, and he's such a well-known figure who
iconic,
Mario
an
wouldn't be
icon.
anything the same wouldn't be the same without him, so he's earned his retirement, and, no one's ever gonna forget what he did, so good on him.
Yeah, yeah. I know that there are also the cartoons that I just mentioned before, like the ones from the 80s and 90s, and yeah, there's also the manga and books and so many games, like I said. Let me see. And I think there's also, oh yeah, the movies, because we got the 93 movie and we just
Oh,
got
yeah.
the 2023 movie, which was
Yes.
fully animated. So
Yeah.
between both movies, thoughts. Let's hear them.
Well, I didn't actually see the newer film. I was waiting to see what the reaction was to it, which was obviously it was very positive. It was a huge hit, and most everything I saw online from people, not just critics, was that they enjoyed it, regardless of the person who voiced Mario in the film. People really enjoyed the movie overall, and so I would like to see it. I just haven't really gotten around to it with all the other stuff that I'm busy consuming really rapidly. But I will be completely honest that I loved the old movie from 1993 as a kid. It was so weird and I loved it. It was just the weirdest movie. And I was a little kid watching it at the time. And I just thought that it was so cool. I don't really know why. I'm sure it's horrible if I went back and I watched it now. I'd probably be like, what is this? But as a kid, I didn't know anything about quality, so I thought it was hilarious. And like the Goombas were people. Like it was really weird, but I was a weird kid. I was into weird stuff. So I thought it was hilarious and an incredible example of bizarre films that got made in Hollywood that just become cult classics because that one is something else. And you ask yourself, how did this get made? How did people look at the shots at the end of the day and say, oh, yeah, that's good. I'm happy with that. Because it is so strange. And as a conglomerate film, you're like, there are so many weird decisions in this every step along the way. Why was this what they made? I appreciate that sort of thing.
Yeah, you just gotta appreciate it.
Yeah.
I won't say much about the new one because I know you haven't seen it, but I will
No
just say,
spoilers.
yeah, check it out. That's all I'll
Yeah, yeah.
say.
Cool. I will.
Yeah, even if some of the casting is a little questionable, not gonna lie, but yeah,
Um,
yeah, that's my only big, yeah.
yeah, I
But
mean, we could
at
talk
the
about
end of the
that one
day,
forever.
bro, yeah. But another day, another
Oh,
podcast,
yeah. Wow, you're
because
getting a
I've
lot of
got,
material.
yeah. Bro, yeah, tell me about it. So, I guess to close this out, share something that you're really excited about that you wanted to promote, plug in, share your socials, any last bit of advice, closing thoughts, all that good jazz.
Oh, nice. Awesome. Thank you. So, thank you so much for having me on. And I guess I'd like to just leave everybody with any of the voice actors out there who are just up and coming. You're wondering how to get your start. Honestly, there's no wrong way of going about this. If you're passionate, don't worry too much about people saying, oh, you really shouldn't do this or you shouldn't do that. There's obvious etiquette and ethics things that you need to keep in mind. But as long as you're motivated and you want to give it a try, you can. You don't necessarily have to go to school and pay for drama lessons or anything like that. I am completely self taught in every single endeavor that I have undertaken, whether it's art. I was a website developer, I was completely self taught. It's just about what you want to do and don't let somebody else and their path dictate how you go about yours. So I would tell everybody, please keep that in mind. Keep persevering. I know it's a really hard time right now for a lot of us the world over, but know that I'm sure it will get better and that you just got to keep going through it. So I'm in there with you. I wish everybody the best of luck. In terms of my social thingies, you can usually just look up Haley Hylia. I'm on all sorts of stuff, or Buy Haley Hylia is my Etsy shop where you can see my video game art. I'm working on some new pieces, got some Star Wars and more Final Fantasy coming the way. But also, yeah, I'm working on a novel, two novels actually, and I'm working on a video game idea. So, yeah, check out haleyhylia.com. And I'm probably going to post more about that. You can also follow me on Instagram and see what I'm up to occasionally. But yeah, we'll see what happens.
Right on, right on. I just want to thank you so much for your wonderful time and just for being such a lovely guest. Like, this was so much
Oh,
fun.
stop it.
Yeah, I know there was a little bit of scheduling conflicts.
Oh, welcome
Time
to New
zones.
Zealand. Because I'm in tomorrow for you, so it's difficult talking to the past.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, boy,
yeah, yeah.
that is gonna throw me off so
I
much
know.
when I start
It's so
traveling.
ridiculous. Yeah, it's pretty
Yeah,
intense.
yeah. Until we can do another episode in the near
Yeah.
future, who knows? Yeah, this is so much fun. I'd love to do another one
Yeah, me
someday.
too. We got a lot to talk about.
And a lot to catch up, man.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I guess we can just, since we're kind of at the end of this, let's have a little fun here. You could just give a little sample of some of your character voices, if you may.
Sure. Well, everybody really loves to hear Breath of the Wild Zelda, and it seems to be the one that I'm most familiar with. So thank you so much, Robert, for having me on today. It's been a really enjoyable time. But we've got so much to talk about. Sonny, it's going to be a lot for us to go over Legend of Zelda stuff. We've got so much that we want to talk about. And, just because I'm in New Zealand doesn't mean that we can have the little problem that we had this morning with our scheduling. I'm sure that we've learned our lesson now and that we can go forward together on the same page, even if we're in two different time zones. Thank you.
Awesome. And I think we, yeah, yeah, that was, wow, was not expecting this, but thank you. Yeah, there's so much Zelda and more. Oh, I don't think we've heard a little Mario.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm not going to do Super Mario, but Peach, you know, it's difficult to do into the microphone because it's so airy. And then Daisy is just really a over the top version of almost my original voice. So it's really fun doing that because I can just sound really obnoxious.
That's pretty much Daisy in a nutshell.
Yeah, I know, right? I was kind of taken aback when Gabaleth was like, "Oh, can you do Daisy?" And I was like, "Wait, is that something that you're trying to tell me?" But no, it's fine.
Yeah, and for the closing, you can just say, "Hi, my name is Haley Hylia. I've done da, 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 da. You might have heard me and blah blah blah." And this is Station Square Podcast with Robert or whoever you want to do it.
Wow, I'm going to try to remember what you just said. Hi, everybody. My name's Haley Hylia. This is Station Square Podcast with Robert Jackson. You may have heard me online playing Breath of the Wild, Zelda, Daisy, Peach, and many other characters. Have fun listening in.
That was perfect. Thank you
Oh,
so
great.
much. Yeah,
Awesome.
and
Thank you.
yeah, thank you. And this is Robert Jackson, and thank you so much for tuning in to the show. And yeah, have a lovely rest of your weekend. I mean, it's already weekend for you, Haley, but have a good
Almost.
one. Almost. Yeah, so have a great one. Thank you all so much for watching, and stick around next time on Station Square. This is Robert Jackson, signing out. Ta-ta, lovelies, all you lovely people out there. Good day, good evening, goodbye, good riddance, and fare thee well. See ya. See you later.